For the better part of a century, our entire world has been shaped by this one simple, kind of elegant idea: the bell curve. It's everywhere. It's in our economics, our finance, how we understand risk itself. But what if this beautiful idea is just fundamentally wrong? In this explainer, we're going to see how our obsession with things being normal has left us totally blind to the real risks of a complex world. And it all starts with a game we've all played, but probably never like this.
So let me ask you a simple question. We've all played rock, paper, scissors, right? It seems like the absolute definition of random chance. 1, 2, 3, shoot. But what if millions of dollars were on the line? Would that change things?
Believe it or not, this actually happened. Back in 2005, the CEO of a huge Japanese corporation had this massive art collection. We're talking works by Cezanne and Van Gogh, and he couldn't decide who should auction it off, Christie's or Sotheby's. So, what was his solution? Yep, a single game of rock, paper, scissors. Winner takes all. So, how did it play out? Well, Sotheby's treated it as pure chance. They just went with paper. But Christie's, they went for a strategic edge. Get this, they consulted the 11-year-old twin daughters of one of their directors, and the girls figured their opponent would overthink it and expect them to play rock, so they'd play paper to beat it. So Christie's played scissors, and just like that, they won millions in commission. This reveals something fundamental. Human interaction isn't truly random, and that changes everything. This idea that things aren't really random when people are involved, it kind of flies in the face of a concept that has dominated our thinking for centuries: the normal distribution, the bell curve. So how did this one simple curve become so incredibly powerful, so seductive? Well, the journey of this idea is pretty fascinating. It all started with simple coin tosses back in 1733. But about a century later, it made this huge leap from games of chance to humanity itself, when a guy named Adolphe Quetelet used it to invent the concept of the average man. Fast forward to 1952, and it becomes the absolute bedrock of modern finance, thanks to Harry Markowitz. An idea born from a coin flip was now being used to model our entire world. And people were just captivated by it. The English statistician Francis Galton said that if the ancient Greeks had known about the bell curve, they would have literally deified it. It felt like this hidden, beautiful order in the chaos of the world, a supreme law. The problem is, it's a law that reality doesn't actually follow. So that brings us to the core of the problem here. If the world isn't normal, then what is it? Well, the answer lies in something statisticians call fat tails. Okay, so the bell curve tells us that these really extreme, crazy events are super, super rare. Their probability just drops off a cliff. But a fat-tailed distribution, or power law, says something totally different. It says that wild, unexpected events are way, way more likely than we think. The tails of the graph are literally fatter, meaning they hold a lot more possibility of extreme outcomes. And look, this isn't just some abstract theory. The data we have from the real world is, well, it's overwhelming. The assumption that everything is normal isn't just a little bit wrong, it's profoundly wrong. I mean, just look at this. The sheer scale of the difference here is staggering. A statistic called kurtosis is basically a measure of this fatness we're talking about. A perfect, neat bell curve has a kurtosis of 3. But look at real-world data. Earthquakes are over 8,000, and U.S. city sizes are over 6,000. This shows that complex systems, like societies and the planet, they don't create neat curves. They create wild, unpredictable, fat-tailed results. So what? Who cares about some statistical detail, right? Well, it matters because it means our models are systematically, and I mean dangerously, underestimating the risk of total catastrophes, whether we're talking about natural disasters or financial crashes. Let's try to put a real number on this. If you were to calculate the true, fair insurance premium to protect against a major crash in GDP, it would be 107 times higher than the premium you'd get from a model that assumes a nice, normal bell curve distribution. We aren't just mispricing risk a little bit, we're off by orders of magnitude. And believe me, this isn't just some theoretical problem that statisticians argue about. Relying on these flawed models has had devastating, real-world consequences, especially when you look at the world of finance. Okay, so let's look at the main tool banks use to manage their risk. It's called value at risk, or VAR for short. In simple terms, it's just a number that tells them, hey, we are 99% confident that we won't lose more than X million dollars in a single day. But, and this is the fatal flaw,
What about that other 1% of the time? VAR is completely silent about what happens then. It's blind to the true scale of a catastrophe. And the data shows that when you do fall into that 1% tail, the simple VAR model underestimates the potential loss by a factor of 3.
And here is exactly what that failure looks like in the real world. In 2012, before the infamous London whale incident, JP Morgan's model predicted a maximum daily loss of $67 million. The actual loss they announced on one single day? $2 billion. The model wasn't just wrong, it was living in a completely different universe from reality.
And the problem goes way beyond just VAR. This flawed assumption, this myth of the bell curve, it is baked right into the DNA of modern finance. It's in the famous Black-Scholes model for options, it's in credit risk models, and it was absolutely central to the copula models that helped fuel the 2008 financial crisis. All of them are built on the same shaky foundation.
So, if all the models are broken, what's the alternative? How do we build a more robust way of thinking about risk in a world that we now know has these dangerous fat tails? Okay, now this is just incredible. Get this. Harry Markowitz, the guy who won a Nobel Prize for creating this complex, normality-based modern portfolio theory, was asked how he invested his own retirement money. And his answer? He didn't use his own theory. He used a dead simple rule. Just divide the money equally among a bunch of different assets. Why? His reason was simple. It was more robust in the face of true uncertainty.
Markowitz's own insight kind of points us to a new path forward. First, we have to acknowledge the difference between measurable risk and true unknowable uncertainty. Second, we need to prefer simple, robust rules over these fragile, complex models. And third, we have to stop trying to predict every little spark and instead just build fire breaks into the system, things like simple leverage ratios for banks, to contain the damage when things inevitably go wrong. This all leads to a really powerful new philosophy. For decades, the quest for a perfect model has left us being precisely wrong again and again. In a complex world, it is so much better to be approximately right.
And that leaves us with a final, and I think really important question to think about. In our increasingly interconnected world, financially, socially, you name it, these complex interactions are only getting stronger. So are we inadvertently building systems that are creating even fatter, even more dangerous tails for the future?